Jesus was a skier.
And I was driving down the access road and I said, wow, I said, what just happened? I said, what are the churches doing for all these tourists and vacationers? And I said, somebody ought to do something.
Yeah, we're passionate here at Loon Mountain Ministry at the mission that God has given us. It's three-part. It's to love God, serve community, enjoy mountains.
And the reason for that is because it's not our visions to begin with, it's God's vision. And because we're plugged into Him and His desire for this ministry, it is exploding. And God is using it to change people's hearts and impact their lives and lead them to Christ. And I am, as you can tell, I'm a little bit excited about that.
Ski and snowboard ministry is a huge opportunity. There are 400 million skiers and snowboarders around the world and a ton of second homeowners.
Ski resort ministry in particular goes to where people are at. So people are having a recreational experience, and we go to them rather than have expectations that they are somehow going to find us in a church.
It is a lot of fun to see how God uses Loon Mountain Ministry and other ski resort ministries to be helpful to a ski resort.
If someone asks me about Loon Mountain Ministry, the first thing that comes to mind is community. What Loon Mountain Ministry provides to people, our guests, and to our local community is a relationship, a connection.
So having a ministry or a church service here at the resort is crucial because every guest has a different demand. Every guest has a different need and desire. Part of that need and desire could be the religious desire that they have, and for us to have a religious service and a ministry fits that desire of that guest, and that is a good business sense for us at a resort.
I spent 31 years in the ski business before I left to pastor a local church. Shortly after that, I made contact with Loon Mountain Ministry, and I've been very impressed with their outreach into the snow sports industry. So it's really been a great contact for us. I'm excited about how we can reach into the next generation and into the resort area. The folks that visit the resort here in Lake Placid and at Whiteface Mountain in Wilmington.
When we're playing, we're much more open to things. And when we're playing together, we're much more open to each other. And so Ski Resort Ministry puts together those two things that gives us a real opportunity to come alongside.
I can't think of a better way to expose someone to spirituality than to ride the gondola before the sun rises and be welcomed into a community of people. Some may be your friends, some are their friends, some people you will never have met before or never see again. But when you come off the gondola and you witness sunrise with Loon Mountain Ministry at the top of Loon Peak, it's a very spiritual moment. And oh, by the way, you get to ski and ride down the mountain afterwards.
I thought, gee, what about if I write about starting resort ministries and maybe it'll give somebody an inspiration to do something like that. So I bounced it off a couple of friends of mine and I got the responses, that sounds like something great to write about. Have you ever thought about doing something like that yourself? Well, no. But after you hear that twice, you begin to think maybe somebody's trying to tell you something. I just told them, look, I'm being led out of the pastoral ministry. I'll be here 2 or 3 years at the most. I don't know what I'm going to be doing now, but I just want to give you a heads up. And by the time that 3 years had come, I realized that God was calling me into resort ministries. Well, what resort was only 15 minutes away from my churches in Strong and Kingfield? Maine's largest ski resort, Sugarloaf Mountain. And a ministry started there that I was at for the next 7 or 8 years. And it came time to leave, and I thought, well, where am I going to go?
Yeah, so in the early 90s, there was Skip over here in New England in New Zealand, there was, in a couple different places, there were people that God was laying individually on their hearts the need to reach the ski and snowboard culture for Him.
So I came up and spent 2 or 3 days up here, and I said to myself, my goodness, if I wasn't at Sugarloaf, I'd like to be here myself. This is a year-round ministry. Sugarloaf was only in the wintertime. Went up to Waterville Valley, knew one of their executives, and he said, Skip, it'd be great to have you here, but I don't think you get any support. Now, if I were you, I'd talk to the manager of Loon Mountain, because he goes to church. I think he'd be really receptive. I walked in.
That was Phil Graving.
Phil Graving, right. Walked into the office up here on a cold call, went in and introduced myself and talked with Phil for about half an hour. And I'll never forget it, at the end of that half hour, he said, I'm cautiously optimistic. He said, I'll have to check out your credentials, but we'll do that and we'll give you a call back. And 2 days later, I got a call from his office. He said, when would you like to begin?
We were newlyweds in 1990. And I always thought, when we were engaged, that we were going to be at Sugarloaf. So when we found out we were coming here, that was a little unsettling for me, but it was, my family's in Maine, so. But we got here, and our first home was the homeless shelter, which I managed.
When summer came around, I thought, well, what are we going to do now? And I said, well, they've got a pancake breakfast up there Sunday mornings. Maybe we'll, start a service for those who are at the pancake breakfast. And I checked with Phil, and he said, that'd be great, go ahead. So we put out some posters, and we started I'll never forget our first service on top of the mountain in the summertime. People were sitting around at the beautiful summer's day, 70 degrees out. People were eating their pancakes and stuff. I'd go around to the tables, introduce myself, and about 10 minutes before our service, I'd yell, church service down the path here in 10 minutes, and church service in 5 minutes. And I went down there, and there were a total of 4 people there, and 2 of them were Joyce and I.
He did everything else. He was the music. He did the children's story. He was doing everything. And one Sunday, I just noticed that he was so stressed. So I said, is there anything I could do to help? So he asked me to do the children's message. And I fell in love with this great big puppet, and she had the curly hair, and I named her Esmeralda. And that was the start of Esmeralda. And then a St. Bernard puppet, a dog, came into the thrift store, and so that was Jack. Yeah, so that was Jack. So all the stories were from Esmeralda and Jack. So that was the start of the children's ministry right there.
It's amazing to think that Encore has been around for almost 30 years now, and looking back, it's only because of the hard work of Skip and Joyce at the beginning and how it's continued through these years to be a support to the ministry. We're so thankful for them.
The idea for the thrift store started because I had a clothing collection box put up at Sugarloaf Mountain when I was there before coming to Loon, and we had collected all sorts of clothing and giving it to a local nonprofit thrift store. And so when I came up to Loon, I decided, hey, we can do the same thing here. And so we started out in December of 1992, I believe. But the impetus behind to begin with was the need for a financial support base that, being a ministry to vacationists and tourists, we simply didn't have, because everybody's here for 1 or 2 weeks and then they're gone.
So back in the early days, of course, we're trying to figure it all out. Pricing, brands, how to do things.
We had a lady working for us named Linda McIntyre, and she and her husband Scott, she took over the management of the thrift store, brought in a lot of her family, and the thing continued to prosper under her guidance.
Well, also we knew retirement was coming up, and it would be a good thing for her to just get her feet wet and get in and start running it. And it freed us up to leave.
2005 was my actual introduction to ski resort ministry when my best friend got married at the chapel at Sugarloaf. And Pam Morris, the chaplain at Sugarloaf, did the wedding. We hit it off, and she told me all about ski resort ministry.
About 2 years before Joyce and I were retiring, I thought, when we leave, I don't have anybody in the wings to take over. A resort ministry is a very unique calling, and not everybody feels led or even is aware of such an opportunity, not to mention being prepared or equipped to do it. In one of the newsletters about a couple of years before he left, I said, here's the deal. We're going to be retiring in 2 years. I don't have anybody to take over. The person who submitted his name was Earl Morse. He and his wife Pamela took over the ministry at Sugarloaf after I established that in the 80s. And he called me up and he said, Skip, he said, I don't really want to give you this guy's name because we'd like him to take over for us when we retire. But he said, you're a lot closer to that than we are. So I'm talking about Marcus Corey.
We became part of that family there at Sugarloaf Area Christian Ministry, and we just saw the impact that it had on the culture there. We loved that culture, but we were involved in Christian camping ministry that we also loved. We did that for about 7 years, and it was during the end of that where Earl, Pam's husband, said, hey, would you ever consider being a ski resort chaplain? A friend of ours over at Loon is retiring, and they're looking for someone to replace him. And so in 2012, September, Labor Day weekend, we took our little 3 kids and Heidi and I in our 1 vehicle, and we moved to Lincoln, New Hampshire.
I think one of the major challenges is the transitional nature. So we joke that we're probably on our 5th congregation now. We only have 1 person who's still involved in our ministry who was there when we started. So it's hard to build leadership teams in resort ministries because people are coming and going a lot.
It was a learning experience from day one, but it was kind of lonely.
You have no idea, and many times you won't hear from people whose lives have been impacted. The most difficult thing was being basically a solo missionary.
When we first joined the ministry here in Lincoln, there was really only a mountaintop service for the church. There was one in the summer and one in the winter, and we loved attending as a family in the summer, but in the winter it was really difficult because we had young kids, and so Marcus would attend church on the mountain and the kids and I would go elsewhere. And so it was then that we began praying for a local church for our family.
It was a need that we had observed in town for a very long time to have an established local church.
And it was really cool because God answered that prayer immediately that fall, and the local church began 2013.
So we prayed, and actually God confirmed with a miracle. We went to the local town to ask if we could rent the community building. And the rec director told me that someone wished to be remain anonymous, but they had donated money for us, our church, to meet there for 2 years.
And bringing those two together, the mountain ministry and establishing a community ministry.
When I first came on staff at Loon Mountain Ministry, one of the needs of the local church was for long-term relational discipleship. Things had already gotten rolling with the youth group and Nathan leading that, and when I got here, one of the things that I began to implement and lead are what I call missional community groups. Missional community groups can probably be compared to what most people would call small groups or community groups, and it's really, we want it to be not just something that we add to our schedules, but really a holistic discipleship tool that, you know, we come together in our homes, we're eating together, we're going out into the community, we're serving together, we're worshiping together, we're learning and studying God's Word together.
When the local church started and the mountain ministry began to grow, we soon realized that Heidi and I, unlike Skip and Joyce, could not do this just as a solo team.
Our calling to outdoor ministry probably began our first year of college when we went to a intensive Bible and wilderness program in northern Wisconsin.
And at the time we were both teaching health and phys ed in the schools outside of Philly, and in 2015 Marcus invited us up here to come spend the summer and come check out Loon Mountain Ministry and see what it was all about.
I really had a desire to go and serve at a ski resort ministry. I actually came to faith through snowboarding. towards the tail end of the internship, I made the decision through a lot of time praying that I would stick around and lead the youth group.
So I grew up in Lincoln, New Hampshire. I went to the local public school here. I would say growing up, I was kind of like the goody two-shoes, and I thought that going to church, just believing God was real was enough, but I realized during my freshman year at college that I never really had a true relationship with God.
After that summer, we felt that it was pretty clear that the Lord was leading us up to Loon Mountain Ministry here.
And very quickly, Loon Mountain Ministry became like my family. Started helping out with worship and youth group.
And over the past 5 years, we've seen the youth group continue to grow and see more consistency. It's been really, really sweet to see, and I'm so blessed to be a part of this movement. It's cool that it's 30 years now.
Since moving up here, I would say we've only felt affirmed in our calling to be here, and I would say that's largely due to how we've seen God at work in our local community, in our growing family, and through Loon Mountain Ministry.
Since the early days, Loon Mountain Ministry has been a key player and a key example of what it looks like to be faithful and really serve a community well.
Loon Mountain Ministry's connection to the community is an invaluable asset to not only Loon Mountain Resort, but the Lincoln and Woodstock communities.
Well, over 3 years ago, Loon Mountain Ministry was one of the founding members of the Bridge Project. They saw a need in the community with people that needed help with the resources, and they wanted to find someone that can help them do that. The Bridge Project is a nonprofit organization that helps people in our community with resources that they need to better themselves.
And it was really cool to see how the Corey family and Loon Mountain Ministry was so involved in the community, and it really helped me grow as a person.
And God opened up this opportunity for the thrift store to be both a blessing to us as a ministry by providing most of our support, also a blessing to the community. We gave away at least 10% of all of our proceeds to the community.
Marcus and Drew continue to be on the board of directors and help support financially, emotionally, and spiritually.
It's been cool to get a different perspective on all the different things the ministry does through the youth group or Sunday morning services, through the thrift shop, and now the coffee shop. There's just so many facets to the ministry, and it's been really awesome seeing how the ministry has been a part of the community through each of those facets.
We have seen the effects of ski resort ministry here at Loon and the Lincoln Woodstock community, and we want to share that with other mountain towns.
And through that camaraderie that we built between the two organizations, we were able to make some really neat things happen, like Church Chair, where we ride up the chairlift a half an hour before we get started for the day, to a lodge that's mid-mountain, and we have a service out by a fire pit. So we decided that we'd bring it to the top of Snows Mountain in the summertime, and that has been really well received from everybody in the community and even our guests that are coming from outside the community.
We're excited about the doors God's opened at Waterville Valley Community Church and all that He's doing down there. It has been a blast to see God at work.
Today we're really encouraged with the addition of the coffee shop into the thrift store.
And then this past August, when we opened up the coffee shop at Encore, I started managing that.
Encore Thrift and Coffee now is a place for people to gather for church, as well as people in the community. We're excited to see this space being utilized to bring people together.
It's been exciting being part of a ministry in which you see people maybe only once, but they're from literally all around the world.
I would say if you're looking for like-minded people who love the outdoors and appreciate just being together and active together, that's you found the right group.
The transitional nature, the isolation, sometimes waiting for your paycheck, those are the kind of challenges that come with ski resort ministry. You gotta love what you do. This is a lifestyle choice, and I'm so glad we made it and raised our kids in it.
It's been an affirmation that from the very beginning, this ministry has not been my idea, or even Marcus's idea. This has been God's idea. And the provisions he made for our support, the opportunity to open a thrift store, the people he's brought on board, it's been amazing to see God's hand at work in this ministry. And I've been excited, as has Joyce been, to see that occur and to be a part of this.
We'd like to thank you for watching. It's been amazing to see what God has done in 30 years, and we can't wait to see what he does in the next 30 years. Join us in loving God, serving community, and enjoying mountains. We'll see you on the hill. That's a wrap.
How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Oh yeah.